Okay, bored now? The debates around racism, they're important, but they're not really moving things forward. You'll have people on our side of the argument saying, look, here's racism, and we'll point to some statistic or a statement from a politician or journalist, and then people on the other side of the argument will accuse us of being overly woke or sensitive, saying, how dare you suggest that Britain is racist, and so we'll have to point to some statistic or a statement, and round we go. So how do we get off this merry-go-round? Now, while the agenda of certain people in the media is to basically downplay racism in the UK, they never go so far as to say that racism doesn't exist in the UK because they need to appear reasonable. So let's start there. If you agree that there's racism in the UK and you don't agree with that racism, what are you doing to get rid of it? Tell me one policy that you've been supporting to tackle racism in the UK. Anything from any of you guys, ever. Oh, and having a few people from ethnic minorities who just happen to have views on racism that go against the views of the vast majority of people from ethnic minorities as presenters in your news shows or ministers in your government doesn't count. Boris Johnson responded to the Black Lives Matter protest by promising to address racism. And what did we get 8 months later? A report that downplayed racism so badly the United Nations had to get involved. But of course, it didn't deny the existence of racism. In fact, it even made some suggestions as to how to tackle it. Funny how none of those suggestions made it into the list of laws that Boris Johnson plans to pass this year. In fact, the only law with a racial element in his Queen's speech was the plan to ban people who don't have photo ID from voting, which would disproportionately affect people from ethnic minorities. And our system is already bad enough in that respect. In the last election, the Tories got 44% of the vote, but that gave them 56% of the seats in Parliament. So when you do the maths, Labour votes were worth 24% less than Tory votes in that election. And given that people from ethnic minorities vote overwhelmingly anti-Tory, that means that the votes of people from ethnic minorities were worth objectively less than those of white people. And yet I don't hear these people calling for a fairer voting system. You know the facts. You know that Oxford University sent out 3,200 job applications to various sectors of the UK economy, changing only the name on the CV. And they found that ethnic minority names had a 41 to 47% lower chance of being called back to interview. And you know that someone's job is one of the main factors in their quality of life. So you know that life in the UK passes through a filter of racism. So why aren't you calling for blind CVs? Why do you spend so much more of your time telling people not to talk about racism instead of demanding that the government pass laws to get employers to use online anonymous job application platforms? That would deliver a huge blow to racial discrimination in the UK. You know that this problem exists, yet you never seem to try to fix it. Weird. Instead, you spend your time saying that everybody who says they support Black Lives Matter supports the organisation that took that name and got themselves verified on Twitter. And it doesn't matter to you that everybody who takes the knee keeps saying that it's not about the organisation. It doesn't matter that the largest black voices speaking out in support of Black Lives Matter have been telling you repeatedly that it's not about the organisation, it's just about the fight against racial injustice, but that doesn't matter to you. Here's a thought. If you were really anti-racist, wouldn't you be doing everything you could to try and separate the anti-racism movement worldwide from an organisation that you clearly don't like, instead of constantly trying to tie the two together? Oh, and just so we're being fair, if Labour wants to be taken seriously as an anti-racism party, then we need to see some anti-racism manifesto policies, not in 3 years' time, now. For example, the Lamy Report and blind CVs is an easy win because it also addresses discrimination based on gender, region and class. And the Tories won't be able to argue against that because their own race report tried to excuse racial discrimination on the basis that employers were assuming that people from ethnic minorities were of a lower class.
Okay, but that's worse. I mean, you do get how that's worse, right?
But you get the idea. The facts show that racism exists in the UK and has a significant effect on the quality of life and the democratic freedoms of people from ethnic minorities. So status quo is racist. So supporting status quo is supporting racism. That's why those of us who aren't racist keep talking about it, while you call us woke and accuse us of hating the UK, when in fact, we love the UK, which is why we want to make it better. You're the ones who throw a tantrum every time you see us trying to suck the poison out of a country that you claim to love. So to all of you who are tired of being called racist, and I'm especially talking to celebrities, journalists, Boris Johnson, and any MP in any party, if you want us to stop blaming you for the racism in the UK, tell us what you're doing to get rid of it. Because you're the ones in power right now. We're all ears.